The Kumbh, has not been addressed adequately by the BJP government in UP as well as by the centre. They feel things were hidden, bodies, more people died. That's what the allegation of the Samajwadi Party is. Many more people are missing. That's also the allegation of the Samajwadi Party. We saw this fight happening inside the UP assembly as well. But if you speak to the BJP and they say that this is a hypocritical attitude, especially of the Congress Party, which is speaking so much about the Kumbh, but their top leadership, be it Mallikarjun Kharge, who said your sins will not be washed away by taking a dip in the Kumbh, or the entire Gandhi family, never went to the Mahakumbh this time. Rahul Gandhi even went to Raebareli, stayed a night. The Kumbh is hardly an hour's drive from there. But Rahul Gandhi chose to give the Mahakumbh a skip, like he did to the Ram temple, which he has not been to till date. Nobody from the Gandhi family has gone to the Ram temple as well. So BJP counters this by saying that this is the hypocritical attitude by the Congress Party, whose top leadership has not gone to the Ram temple, has not gone to the Mahakumbh, but always tries to find a fault with the arrangements which were held by the BJP government during this 45-day-long Mahakumbh in Prayagraj.
Oh yes, and like we've been discussing, despite the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath addressing some of those concerns inside the assembly through press conferences, the opposition is pretty much stuck to the charge that they've levelled all throughout. But many thanks, Aman, for putting that in perspective. The Bharatiya Janata Party has come out with a sharp response as well. Many in the BJP calling it a diversionary tactic, but the opposition is also once again united on this issue, raising some questions once again with the BJP. Listen in.
देखिए, महाकुंभ के साथ सब है। महाकुंभ के साथ कांग्रेस के भी तमाम नेता महाकुंभ में गए। महाकुंभ से किसी को इतराज नहीं, लेकिन महाकुंभ का सारा श्रेय लोगों का ले लेना, सरकार के लोगों को लेना ही गलत है। साधु संतों की जो है वो है उत्सव है, वो लोग इसको मनाते हैं, उन लोगों का आयोजन नहीं है। इसको सरकारी आयोजन बनाने के लिए लोगों ने ये किया। उस पर भी जो व्यवस्थाओं में जो कुछ भी हुआ उसकी भी निंदा करनी चाहिए। अगर कोई भगदड़ मरा या ट्रेन स्टेशन पे मरे तो उन सबकी भी निंदा होनी चाहिए। लेकिन उसके साथ साथ महाकुंभ के विरोध में कोई नहीं है। मैं खुद महाकुंभ में गया था, तो उसका कोई नहीं, लेकिन साधु संतों का प्रभुत्व इस पे रहना चाहिए, न कि नेताओं का।
When the budget session started, the day one onwards, we are asking for a discussion on Kumbh, because we are also very much interested to discuss about the Kumbh and whatever things happened, good thing happened, to appreciate good things, whatever tragedy happened, to highlight that also. But they are not even given a chance to discuss at all. Government totally ignored our demand for discussion on Kumbh. Now what happened? Without any prior notice, Prime Minister can give a statement any time. But there is a procedure, there is a convention that it should inform House earlier. They don't want to House on smoothly. This is what the situation.
देश के स्वाभिमान के लिए, देश की जो सनातन की जो एक मैं कहूँगी एक स्वाभिमान है, जो एक हमारी एक कलेक्टिव कॉन्शियसनेस है, हमारी जो एक चेतना है, उसको कैसे बढ़ावा देना है, उसको कैसे जगाना है, वो प्रधानमंत्री जी से अच्छा कोई भी नहीं समझ सकता है। हमारा बहुत सौभाग्य है कि आज हम ये हिस्टोरिक स्पीच सुनने के लिए वहाँ थे।
को तो महाकुंभ ही रास नहीं आता है। ये विपक्ष अभी आप समझ लीजिए, मैं पूरे विश्वास से आपको कह सकता हूं कि जिसको इतना गौरवशाली कुंभ की चर्चा ठीक नहीं लगती, प्रधानमंत्री जी स्वयं बता रहे हैं, दुनिया के मैक्सिमम देश आज महाकुंभ की सफलता, महाकुंभ का महत्व, महाकुंभ का पौराणिक दर्शन, उसका गुणगान कर रहा है। वहां विपक्ष महाकुंभ की सफलता की चर्चा भी नहीं सुनना चाहता। मेरा विश्वास है कि आने वाले समय में जो लोग विरोध कर रहे हैं, इनको उनके क्षेत्र की जनता दोबारा संसद में नहीं आने देगी।
And shifting our attention to the next big story, it's also going to be our focus for the next few hours. After spending 9 months in space, NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are set to return to Earth. The undocking from the International Space Station began earlier today, which also marks the end of the 9-month-long situation that they found themselves in the middle of. Sunita Williams remembers returning aboard the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft with Wilmore and 2 other Crew 9 members. And now that their journey back to the Earth has begun, all eyes really on that final leg of the ongoing process. The 4 astronauts will splash down off the coast of Florida at 3:27 a.m. in the wee hours tomorrow. And this, like I said, after a 17-hour-long journey re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. The Prime Minister has also interestingly written to Sunita Williams. This was on the 1st of March, ahead of her return. In fact, he spoke of how he inquired about her health during his meeting with Donald Trump in the United States. But I do want to take it to a guest joining us on the broadcast. Some very important questions on everyone's mind. So S. Somanath, the former chairman ISRO, is with us on the broadcast. Good afternoon to you, sir, and thank you for taking out your time. Like I said, the next few hours are all about a lot of excitement, enthusiasm, curiosity, but everybody's got their fingers crossed. So tell us a little bit about this final journey of Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore back to the Earth's atmosphere, and what kind of challenges, if at all, will they encounter?
Oh, it's a very interesting story to watch, journey of Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore back to Earth. Of course, they started a journey to come back within a short period, say possibly 8 days or so, in a new craft that Boeing was keeping it ready for test flight. But then somehow their journey got extended because of the problem with the spacecraft, which the Boeing was trying to prove. Now they got into International Space Station, the safest place to be there for such a long time. But I'm very happy today. The journey in the Crew Dragon craft, which is yet another craft, is starting, and hopefully everything will be all right, because the Crew Dragon is a very well proven craft, and it has done multiple human space flight missions already, sending crew up in the space station and back. So we look forward for both these people who got a prolonged stay in International Space Station, which they are already been trained and quite capable of handling, are able to come back today. And India primarily watches this event because of our love for them, for wonderful work they are doing, being pioneers in space and being a daughter of India as well. And many challenges, of course, a human space flight is always with a lot of challenges and risks. I think all of you know. The craft is Crew Dragon, the spacecraft is well proven. But in a mission like this, unless everything works very well, they can get into difficulties. But hopefully, I believe that the mission will go very well. They will have to do some orbiting around Earth to reach the precise position for deorbiting, that is burning their engine to reduce the velocities a bit. And because of that, the craft will re-enter atmosphere, go through a very intense heat and high-speed return flight, and landing it back with the parachutes and retro propulsion working very well.
Mr. Somnath, now everybody's talking about that splashdown. It's set to take place, if we go by the math as of right now, in the wee hours tomorrow. But do tell us about what kind of challenges, like I said, and the factors that are going to be important to watch out for. Weather is one of those critical factors. What about the other factors? If you can give us some details into the same.
Of course, weather is always a factor, primarily because of the return. You need to have visibility from ground stations at all points to ensure that they continuously communicate in case of emergencies, that they activate in emergency action, that they are able to understand where they are alternate launch sites or return sites where they are going to do in case of anomalies develop. So because of that, they need to maintain communication throughout. Of course, the US system has a global communication network, both through ground as well as space-based communication infrastructure is already there. And weather, of course, also prevents rescue operations in sea. Primarily, the sea states are to be safer for ships to approach and then recover the craft from the sea. If it is unduly unsafe to go and recover, possibly they can get stuck in sea for longer period. Of course, that is also a part which they are already trained to handle in case of a longer stay in sea. But it has never happened in many of the occasions, because weather is well predictable today because of the global model. And unless the weather is good, they will not initiate the return to Earth maneuvers. Possibly they can get extended. But I don't think so this time.
And
this
if
time
at all,
looks good.
if at all the weather remains unfavorable, and like I said, fingers crossed for that.
Yeah.
Everyone's hoping everything goes well. But if that challenge does become a reality indeed, how much of a delay can we expect?
It can be a few orbits, it can be a few hours, it can be a day. It's all possible based on the assessment that they will make, and primarily the orbit also goes on moving. So the landing point gets moved with the multiple orbits. So they will have to look at what is the most favorable location that they can recover at any point in time, and for based on that, they may decide a rescheduled burn of re-entry appropriate to that, depending upon the weather becoming better at that location correspond to the re-entry point. So I can't predict at this moment how much it is going to be.
And Mr. Somnath, once they do get back to the earth, once they arrive here, of course, they're going to be greeted with a warm welcome. The entire world is talking about the manner in which they've spent these 9 months, and they've been extremely strong through this journey. They've been resilient. Their courage is being lauded by one and all. But they're also going to have to go through a long recovery period. It's going to mean a lot of health care that needs to be extended to them. But what kind of an impact does this kind of a stay in this space mean for an astronaut? Can you give us some insight? Several reports talk about loss of bone density, muscle density, vision perhaps as well. Okay. We'll just reconnect that line with Mr. Somnath. Some trouble with his line. All right, I think he's back. Yes, sir. Okay, we don't have a very clear line with him, but we'll try decoding with Mr. S. Somnath, the former ISRO chairman, on what kind of challenges lie ahead for the 4 crew members who are now on their way back to the Earth. They're going to be entering the Earth's atmosphere, and some of those technical details that we're trying to break down here for viewers as well, and what their journey is going to be like once they are back on the Earth, when they're amongst all of us. Of course, it's going to be a lot of stories that are going to be shared by the 4 crew members, the 2 NASA astronauts that the entire world is talking about, including Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore. And what really did they go through? They've spent birthdays, they've spent Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of that at the International Space Center. Mr. Somnath, I think, is back with us. Yes, sir. I think you heard my question.
Yeah. The issues that are faced by astronauts for a prolonged stay in space has been well studied and documented. I think many of the issues are mostly well known. Primarily, the muscles not being exercising against the gravity causes deterioration in the muscles. And there are other physiological changes, which includes as you mentioned, the change in the bone density and also the fluid flow pattern within the body. In the presence of the gravity, there is a certain flow which will get altered in the absence of the gravity in zero gravity environment. And this long duration stay causes a certain amount of permanent changes that will set in the body, which requires longer time and proper treatment, or rather recovery in Earth in the gravity environment when they come back. And that process can take few months, depending upon the prolonged stay in the orbit. Some of the impacts are fully recoverable. Some possibly to certain percentages of recovery will happen. So, of course, there are other issues, which includes the issues like higher radiation and other issues which could be measured, sometimes cannot be measured also. So, but in the case of Sunita Williams, I am very sure that they are continuously monitoring such changes when they are in orbit. In the International Space Station is fully equipped with the ability to monitor the changes, physiological changes that are happening to her. So both of them, Wilmore and Sunita, will be fully medically evaluated by the time they come back. And I am sure the recovery and the recovery process would have been well defined by the doctors when they are back on Earth.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
very sure
absolutely.
about it.
And that's why they were even recommended to work out, do all of those physical exercises for 2 to 2.5 hours.
They have to do that.
Day.
Yeah. The workout is mandatory there to reduce the damage or reduce the impact, but it cannot be fully eliminated. All the muscles that we actually exercise on Earth will never get exercised even after they plan the type of exercises that they do there. So there is a certain amount of changes which will anyway will occur. For example, gravity cannot be compensated even by restraints. It is not possible fully to compensate. So it has its own impact while in space.
And like you said, the rest, Mr. Somnath, will be known once they're subjected to medical scrutiny here in India, here on the Earth. But thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts with us and putting that in perspective.
Thank you so much.
We'll keep reconnecting with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, with that, it's time for us to head into a very short break. We'll be right back with lots more when we return. Keep watching.
the issues that had led to problems when this 9-month mission has been taking place, why it kept extending to 9 months, the different issues that took place, because there were weather-related issues around the Florida coast that prevented things from taking place more quickly. There was also a different set of issues, the technical issues that took place in the first place. Shrishti, all of this to say that obviously what NASA is trying to pull off tomorrow, all eyes are going to be on whether or not these two astronauts, obviously the entire world is praying they will land successfully. Shrishti, just tell our audiences, assuming everything goes off exactly as it's supposed to, what is the timeline? Just tell us. Starting from right now, 10 a.m., we know that the docking process is taking place as we speak, the undocking process rather. Now, what's going to take place? What are the next few steps until tomorrow morning?
Yes, Toya. So what's happening right now is the undocking of the spacecraft from the International Space Station. After that, after this crucial phase is over, NASA will wait for some more time to start the de-orbit burn, which is the time when the spacecraft starts preparing for re-entry re-entry on Earth. So that crucial phase will begin later this evening, and NASA is going to monitor the weather conditions of the Florida coast, because that is very crucial, because once the re-entry takes place, that usually takes around 3 to 4 hours, and once it gets a go-ahead from the ground station, only then the de-orbit burn, which is the last penultimate phase, will begin later this evening. And if all goes as planned and the weather conditions are favorable, then we hope that the astronauts will be safely landing on Earth off the coast of Florida around 3:30 to 4 o'clock tomorrow Indian Standard Time, and the ground teams will be alerted. So see, apart from the weather, it also depends upon how ready are the ground teams and at the sea, because to ensure the recovery happens as planned and on time. So these are the crucial phases, but as NASA has just announced that the undocking has happened seamlessly, which is a good news, that the astronauts are now soon going to begin their journey back home after 9 long months at the International Space Station.
Okay, Shrishti, one of the most interesting aspects of this story has obviously been what takes place in their bodies when they're in space, and what are the precautions that are going to take place once they land. We know immediately when they land, you're going to have NASA medical teams rushing towards them to run them through all kinds of checks. But just tell our audiences what happens when you're up in space for 9 months. One, for example, is that you forget that gravity is a thing. But just tell our audiences in a more systematic way exactly what takes place.
Definitely. So one point that we should not forget is that both Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are NASA veterans. They have flown into space twice before. So this is their third visit to the space. So they're well aware of the conditions there. The major challenge comes from the extended stay in microgravity, which is the weightlessness, because there's no gravity in space. So when you stay in such conditions for a very long period of time, then there are chances, or rather there are actually effects that you lose your muscle density. There's muscle atrophy. There are some changes in your body fluids, and that is why all these astronauts are really trained to perform exercises and keep their bodies fit at the International Space Station. So yes, that microgravity effects are definitely there. Second, scientists tell us that nominal space radiations are always present at the International Space Station, no matter what kind of precautions you take. So when any extra day in space renders you much more vulnerable to those radiations impact. So once the astronauts are back on Earth, they usually quarantine for some period of time to ensure that their health parameters are okay, and ensure that the effects that they had when they were at the International Space Station. It's very difficult to really say what kind of impacts they actually experience, because space agencies around the world rarely share that data. That data is not available in the public domain, so we really do not know. But scientific studies show that some of the effects can really be recovered, but in the long term it does definitely have an impact. But again, I'd like to emphasize that both Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are veterans. They know how the conditions happen in space, and they really, it's not a new experience for them. And NASA as well, over 270 astronauts have flown into International Space Station over the last 2 decades. So, it's not a new exercise for them, but I think, yes, the point of concern is that these 2 astronauts, they had gone to space for a duration of 8 days, ended up staying there for 9 months, so away from their families. So, yes, now as we all are waiting for their safe return home. And we'll get to know a little more about once they land.
Shrishti, just stay with us. We'll just go over right now to Dinesh Bhai Rawal. He's joining us right now, and he is actually a cousin of Sunita Williams. He's joining us on the phone. Dinesh Bhai, आप हमें सुन सकते हैं अभी? आपको हमारी आवाज़ आ रही है? All right, we'll look to re-establish that connection.
Welcome back. We return with a CNN News 18 mega exclusive. This is with regards to the Enforcement Directorate lens on George Soros' nexus. During investigation, it's been found out, as per highly placed sources, that Open Society Institute was placed under prior reference category by the MHA back in 2016 on account of undesirable activity. Since then, the Open Society Foundation has needed prior sanction of the Home Ministry for sending money to FCRA registered organization in India. But Soros Economic Development Fund, which is the social impact investment arm of the OSI, as per ED sources, since this particular organization could not make foreign donations directly to NGOs in India without prior approval of MHA, there are more details that are now trickling in. SEDF explored alternative options to bypass these restrictions. The FDI suspected to be in violation of FDI norms. So this is the big breaking news story that we're tracking here on CNN News 18. It's a mega exclusive here on CNN News 18. Do remember, this also comes at a time, viewers, that we're seeing multiple teams of Enforcement Directorate now carry out searches at 8 locations recently, not too long ago, including the premises of the Open Society Foundation, and now news coming in with regards to the ED investigation as well. So a couple of points that we've learned, and we're trying to highlight bit by bit for you to really put this entire story in context, and what are the kind of irregularities that the Enforcement Directorate has managed to unearth. This is, of course, source-based information coming in as per highly placed sources in the Enforcement Directorate. And I want to go across to CNN News 18's Anand Narsimhan joining us with more details. Yes, Anand, help us understand what really are the Enforcement Directorate officials up to, and what have they found out so far as per highly placed sources?
Well, now this is information that is exclusive to CNN News 18, and our group editor investigations and security affairs Manoj Kumar Gupta has accessed these details exclusively, and I'm just going to take you through what the ED sources have found out, and then we'll come to this flowchart. Now, during the investigation, it's been found that the Open Society Institute USA or OSI, previously the Open Society Foundation OSF, was placed under the prior reference category. Henceforth, we'll refer to this as PRC, by the Union Home Ministry, MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, while the order dated 30th of May 2016 on account of undesirable activities. Since then, the OSI needs prior sanction of the Home Ministry for sending money to FCRA registered organizations in our country. So, Soros' Economic Development Fund, SEDF, is the social impact investment arm of the OSI or the Open Society Institute. Now let's see, what did the SEDF do? It is seen that the SEDF paid 18.39 crore rupees to RSPL. Now what is this RSPL? So in various activities, the SEDF provided funds for activities linked in the NGO sector in the garb of FDI, foreign direct investment, or consultancy fees. So domestic donations, NGO fees and consultancy fees. And what did they do? To whom did they give this to? They gave it to 3 companies, Messrs. Rootbridge Services Private Limited, RSPL, Rootbridge Services Private Limited, RAPL, Rootbridge Academy Private Limited, and ASAR, Social Impact Advisors Private Limited, or ASAR. These 3 companies collectively received about 25 crore rupees during the period financial year 2021 to financial year 23-24. Now this is what ED sources are revealing to CNN News 18. And they received this money from SEDF. What is SEDF? Again, Soros Economic Development Fund. That is the social impact investment arm of the OSI, Open Society Institute. That is Soros's big wing, the company. Now, what happens next? RSPL received 18.64 crore overall, 18.39 crore here by issuing a compulsory convertible preference share or CCPS at a premium of approximately 2.5 lakh rupees to 2.6 lakh per share based on the DCF method. Since SEDF could not make foreign donations directly to NGOs in our country without prior approval of the MHA, SEDF explored the alternative options to bypass PRC restrictions. The FDI and RSPL is suspected to be a colorable arrangement violating FDI norms. So you circumvent the FCRA regulations and try and use the direct investment FDI route, and that's what they have done. Now RSPL and RAPL. RAPL was incorporated in 2019 into the business of providing fundraising services to non-profit organizations. RAPL received 2.7 crore from SEDF as commission agent services without rendering any services to the SEDF, which shows that the RAPL acted as an agent of the SEDF to bypass FCRA provisions for funding NGOs in our country. ASR is the ASR Social Impact Advisors, incorporated in 2016, 26th of February 2016, into business of public engagement and outreach services as communication strategy, development, capacity building, research, etc. To NGOs in India. ASR received 2.91 crore from SEDF as service fees. And it appears prima facie that the funds received against purported service exports are nothing but donations in disguise to be used for the benefit of NGOs in our country. Now, as per information on record, the OSI group set up an investment company, Aspada Investment Company, AIC, in Mauritius to channelize funding into our country. Further, Aspada Investment Advisors Private Limited, or AIAPL, was established in Bengaluru on 4th of February 2013 to manage, advise SEDF's investments in our country. It is learned that SEDF funded more than 12 companies in our country to the tune of 300 crore rupees. The most astonishing fact is that the investment arm of SEDF in India, Aspada Investment Advisors Private Limited, now called Lightrock Investment Advisors Private Limited, which was advising SEDF for their investments in our country during the material period, was not even kept in the loop. So they have incorporated these companies, they have set up these companies, but this money has been coming in like this. Now the claim is 57% went in salary, 7% consultancy fees, 14% vendor payments and 14% statutory fees. But look at the total amount of donations here itself. It is about 26 crore rupees that has come into this company RSPL via Open Society Foundation's platform, or the investment arm, that is development investment arm, that is SEDF. Like I said, that's how it is called, Soros Economic Development Fund, the social impact investment arm of the OSI. So the ED sources now say FCRA norms were violated, circumvented, and money inflows kept coming into the country via the FDI route, and payments were made in the garb of donations and consultancy fees. And these are the 3 or 4 entities that were created. Bengaluru is where the raids happened because the OSF's Indian arm has its offices there, but the company that was incorporated in Mauritius and its further name, it has a new avatar called Lightrock, that was not even kept in the loop as this money was being funneled into our country. Now these are the allegations, very serious allegations, and these are the details that have been exclusively accessed here at CNN News 18. Back to you, Kritsween.
Oh yes, absolutely. Big story indeed. Open Society Foundation linked organization funding Indian companies by bypassing FCRA regulations. Anand, thank you so much for breaking down all those very important details. We'll keep a close watch on that for now. We shift our attention to more news coming in. This is with regards to the ceasefire talks. Do remember, all eyes have been on the talks that are set to take place between President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Now, do remember, we're learning now in the latest that reports suggest Putin is demanding a halt on all weapon deliveries to Ukraine during this 30-day ceasefire, which has been proposed by US President Donald Trump. Kremlin has said that 2 leaders will discuss plans for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. So a little bit of information coming in on what's really going on in Russia and how they're viewing this proposal coming in from President Donald Trump. So yes, these are suggestions, of course, initial reports of what Kremlin makes of this proposal on part of the United States. It's a 30-day ceasefire, remember, which is being proposed, and there's a lot of brainstorming clearly that's going on in Russia over what they make of this proposal put forth by Donald Trump. I want to go across to Akanksha Swaroop, who joins us with more details. Akanksha, what do you make of reports suggesting that Putin is now demanding a halt on all weapon deliveries to Ukraine? Is this coming from a place of fearing that this particular 30-day period could be misused by Ukraine to mobilize troops and weaponry?
Ever since that showdown that took place between the US President and the Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Oval Office, there was a sense that the Americans are on the Russian side. And given that now Russia has shown its discomfort with regards to the United States now assuming not just weapon delivery of weaponry or even intel sharing, which remains a critical aspect of the kind of defense exchange that have been that in fact coming Washington to give. The fact of the matter is that the Russian president has been very adamant on how they would ensure that the deliveries should stopped and it should be halted immediately. And as rightly highlighted, the fear overall is this entire period of the ceasefire could also be used or rather misused as per them by Ukraine to make further advances into Russian territory. Donald Trump has already made it amply clear in some time from now he will be going on very talked about call with the Russian president, and there are fears that, geographically, whatever changes have taken place, how will the United States pitch the settlement for the kind of geographical or territorial advancements that have been made by both sides, whether it is Russia or Ukraine. And so Donald Trump will be pitching that as part of the long-term ceasefire and a peace plan. But Putin wants all weapon deliveries to be paused, including from Europe, but his priorities to also stop US aid primarily is what we are learning. In fact, the continent was reluctant to stop weapon deliveries as far as EU is concerned, as it could also allow Russia to rearm while Ukraine is prevented doing so. Kremlin has already rejected this idea of 30-day ceasefire on the ground that they would give Ukraine time to rest and rearm. And in fact, Putin had also said that going to be to provide Ukrainian forces pause going to be a difficult period for Russia. So we'll have to see if this is going to also stop. Is there going to be any change in the Russian army's own strategic approach? Is the Russian army going to stop advancing on all fronts as it's continuing to do so? And under the circumstances, the ceasefire would also be viewed as a way to allow Ukraine to strengthen its position. So we'll have to see how Donald Trump navigates this very tricky situation at hand. We all know that it also sent a Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, who for the longest time was the one who was being credited for bringing in that pause as far as the Israel-Gaza war is concerned.
Okay. So one thing is very clear, Akanksha, that if Putin was to abide by the 30-day ceasefire, it's going to come with a lot of conditions. But let's see how this plays out. Thank you so much for breaking down all those details. Shifting our attention now to Nagpur in Maharashtra, where violence broke out following rumours that a holy book was desecrated during a protest by Hindu groups demanding the removal of Aurangzeb's tomb. Now, clashes erupted in the Chitnis Park area of Mahal around 7:30 p.m. and the unrest later spread to other areas like Kotwali and Ganeshpet and later intensified as well. As per the Nagpur police, the violence peaked between 8 and 8:30 p.m. and also prompted security forces be deployed. Over 50 people have been arrested in the latest, and large-scale stone pelting, vandalism, arson was witnessed, and we're putting out some of those CCTV footages as you see on your screens. Multiple vehicles were torched, homes were targeted, and we're picking up reactions from top Mahayuti leaders as well. Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis, in fact, has appealed to the people of Nagpur to maintain peace and order amid the tense situation. And the Deputy Chief Minister, interestingly, has called it a pre-planned conspiracy. He said outsiders were also possibly involved. The opposition, though, has been slamming the Maharashtra government. In fact, has hit out at the government for not being able to contain the law and order situation. Some even demanding the Chief Minister's resignation.
सर ऐसा बताया जा रहा है कि पुलिस की मदद जो है वो देर से मिलने की वजह से ये हादसा हुआ और हादसा बढ़ता गया। इसमें कितना सच है और इसमें इसकी जानकारी के पास आपके पास कुछ सिचुएशन के बारे में कुछ जानकारी?
देखिए, जैसे मैंने बताया कि बहुत लिमिटेड एरिया में हुआ था, क्योंकि उस समय पे र्यूमर्स ज़्यादा फैलते हैं और इसमें अलग अलग फ़ोन्स आ रहे थे अलग अलग जगह से कि यहाँ पे ऐसा हुआ है। कुछ लोग जानबूझ, तो हमारी जो टीम्स हैं वो वेरीफाई करने के लिए वहाँ पे जा रही थी। तो एक पर्टिकुलर एरिया में बताया जा रहा है कि वहाँ पे पुलिस लेट पहुँची। तो जब मैंने इसमें इंक्वायरी के लिए बोला तो हमारे ऑफिसर्स का ऐसा बोलना है कि जब वो गीतांजलि चौक करके एक एरिया, उससे आगे थोड़ा सा आगे जाते ही राइट साइड पे भी उनको कुछ लोग दिखे थे। तो वहाँ पे उतरे कि वही एरिया है क्या, तो वहाँ पे उन्होंने कार्रवाई की, कुछ लोगों को ताबे में लिया। उसके बाद में हंसापुरा जो एरिया है वहाँ पे जैसे वो आगे जा रहे थे तो वहाँ पे उन लोगों का बोलना है कि पुलिस लेट पहुँची। तो कितना लेट पहुँची वो लोग, हम अभी उसके बारे में इंक्वायरी कर रहे हैं, परंतु किसी का कोई जान का कोई नुकसान नहीं हुआ है। पुलिस अगर लेट पहुँची है तो उसमें हम लोग उसके ऊपर कार्रवाई ज़रूर करेंगे।
क्या आह्वान करना चाहेंगे ना?
मैं सभी से बोलना चाहूँगा कि आप अफवाहों पे विश्वास ना रखें। अगर आपके पास में ऐसा कोई इन्फॉर्मेशन आ रही है, कोई रील आ रही है, कोई वीडियो आ रहा है, तो उसके बारे में हमें ज़रूर बताएं। और अगर आपको कोई और भी इन्फॉर्मेशन मिलती है वो ज़रूर शेयर करें। हम जो है सोशल मीडिया हो या इन चीज़ों पे हमारी साइबर टीम है वो वॉच रखी हुई है। अगर आप इसमें इंडल्ज करते हैं तो आपके ऊपर कार्रवाई की जाएगी, इतना मैं स्पष्ट बोलना चाहता हूँ।
And now breaking down details of source-based information coming in as per Nagpur police. Like I said, more than 50 people have been arrested already. The information for people to gather was spread through social media. This once again being cited by sources in Nagpur police. Further, cyber teams have been deployed to understand the timeline of how quick these messages were circulated. Stones, in fact, we're learning were used for pelting, and these stones were picked from a nearby metro site. So these are some of the details that we've accessed in the latest. We're also learning, apart from this, no weapons were carried by the mob, and the attack on the DCP with the axe took place at an isolated location in the neighborhood where they'd gone to track the mob, and the person to evade arrest was the one to use the axe on the officer. That's how that DCP got injured essentially. I want to go across to Yasha Kotak, who joins us with more details, which explains, Yasha, why the police are now scrutinizing CCTV footages to identify those responsible for this kind of violence in Nagpur, and also trying to scrutinize social media accounts. What more are you learning through the conversations you've had with police personnel?
So when we speak of the investigation on the lines of how the violence take place, yesterday cops are now trying to understand how did the message in fact circulate. Here there is an FIR. There are more than 5 FIRs that have been made. More than 50 plus people who've been named in this FIR, including minor. Now here cops are going to further probe the people who have been arrested to understand who was the key conspirator, who was it who informed them to come along that night. In fact, as far as information is concerned, in the afternoon is where several people had started gathering there. There was a mob that had started gathering while the protest of the right-wing organization was on. But amidst all of that, what's also important to note is that the cops had tried to disperse all of that crowd in the afternoon, and which is where in the evening all the crowd gathered together. So yes, now with the help of people who've been arrested, cops would want to find out who was the main accused in this case, who circulated the message of people gathering at that particular location. And apart from that, were they conveyed about the gathering, what kind of gathering it would be, and how is it that all of these people were reached out in a short span of time? Yes.
Okay, all right. Many thanks, Yasha, for putting that in perspective. We'll keep putting out several such reactions coming in, and the latest on the investigations as well. For now, heading into a very short break.
Brought to you by...
One of the issues that had led to problems when this 9-month mission has been taking place, why it kept extending to 9 months, the different issues that took place, because there were weather-related issues around the Florida coast that prevented things from taking place more quickly. There was also a different set of issues, the technical issues that took place in the first place. Shrishti, all of this to say that obviously what NASA is trying to pull off tomorrow, all eyes are going to be on whether or not these two astronauts, obviously the entire world is praying they will land successfully. Shrishti, just tell our audiences, assuming everything goes off exactly as it's supposed to, what is the timeline? Just tell us. Starting from right now, 10 a.m., we know that the docking process is taking place as we speak, the undocking process rather. Now, what's going to take place? What are the next few steps until tomorrow morning?
Yes, Toya. So what's happening right now is the undocking of the spacecraft from the International Space Station. After that, after this crucial phase is over, NASA will wait for some more time to start the de-orbit burn, which is the time when the spacecraft starts preparing for re-entry re-entry on Earth. So that crucial phase will begin later this evening, and NASA is going to monitor the weather conditions of the Florida coast, because that is very crucial, because once the re-entry takes place, that usually takes around 3 to 4 hours, and once it gets a go-ahead from the ground station, only then the de-orbit burn, which is the last penultimate phase, will begin later this evening. And if all goes as planned and the weather conditions are favorable, then we hope that the astronauts will be safely landing on Earth off the coast of Florida around 3:30 to 4 o'clock tomorrow Indian Standard Time, and the ground teams will be alerted. So see, apart from the weather, it also depends upon how ready are the ground teams and at the sea, because to ensure the recovery happens as planned and on time. So these are the crucial phases, but as NASA has just announced that the undocking has happened seamlessly, which is a good news, that the astronauts are now soon going to begin their journey back home after 9 long months at the International Space Station.
Okay, Shrishti, one of the most interesting aspects of this story has obviously been what takes place in their bodies when they're in space, and what are the precautions that are going to take place once they land. We know immediately when they land, you're going to have NASA medical teams rushing towards them to run them through all kinds of checks. But just tell our audiences what happens when you're up in space for 9 months. One, for example, is that you forget that gravity is a thing. But just tell our audiences in a more systematic way exactly what takes place.
Definitely. So one point that we should not forget is that both Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are NASA veterans. They have flown into space twice before. So this is their third visit to the space. So they're well aware of the conditions there. The major challenge comes from the extended stay in microgravity, which is the weightlessness, because there's no gravity in space. So when you stay in such conditions for a very long period of time, then there are chances, or rather there are actually effects that you lose your muscle density. There's muscle atrophy. There are some changes in your body fluids, and that is why all these astronauts are really trained to perform exercises and keep their bodies fit at the International Space Station. So yes, that microgravity effects are definitely there. Second, scientists tell us that nominal space radiations are always present at the International Space Station, no matter what kind of precautions you take. So when any extra day in space renders you much more vulnerable to those radiations impact. So once the astronauts are back on Earth, they usually quarantine for some period of time to ensure that their health parameters are okay, and ensure that the effects that they had when they were at the International Space Station. It's very difficult to really say what kind of impacts they actually experience, because space agencies around the world rarely share that data. That data is not available in the public domain, so we really do not know. But scientific studies show that some of the effects can really be recovered, but in the long term it does definitely have an impact. But again, I'd like to emphasize that both Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are veterans. They know how the conditions happen in space, and they really it's not a new experience for them. And NASA as well, over 270 astronauts have flown into International Space Station over the last 2 decades. So, it's not a new exercise for them, but I think, yes, the point of concern is that these two astronauts, they had gone to space for a duration of 8 days, ended up staying there for 9 months, so away from their families. So, yes, now as we all are waiting for their safe return home. And we'll get to know a little more about once they land.
Shrishti, just stay with us. We'll just go over right out to Dinesh Bhai Rawal. He's joining us right now, and he is actually a cousin of Sunita Williams. He's joining us on the phone. Dinesh Bhai, आप हमें सुन सकते हैं अभी? आपको हमारी आवाज़ आ रही है? All right, we'll look to re-establish that connection. We do have a relative of Sunita Williams joining us right now. And we'll actually be bringing you multiple guests through the day today and tomorrow morning to bring us coverage around the story. Okay, we'll just go back to Shrishti for a second and ask her more. Shrishti, tell our audiences, there's a lot of really interesting questions, a lot of excitement around whether, how this will take place, what's going to happen. One of the funniest questions that we saw taking place in the press, all right, Shrishti, we'll just have to come back to you in a second. We have been able to establish that connection with Sunita Williams' cousin, Dinesh Bhai Rawal, joining us now. Dinesh Bhai ji, आप हमें सुन सकते हैं? आवाज आ रही है आपको हमारी?
अरे मैंने कहा आपको कि आवाज मुझे नहीं सुनी जाती। मैं 3-4 मिनट में मेरी ऑफिस पर पहुंचकर
Welcome back. We return now with a breaking news update that's just come in, and this is the meeting that took place between Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and his Netherlands counterpart, Ruben Brekelmans. Now, what Mr. Rajnath Singh has essentially conveyed to his Netherlands counterpart is not to provide defence equipment or technology to Pakistan. This is source-based information coming in. Both ministers have discussed enhancing bilateral defence cooperation, focusing on security, information exchange, the Indo-Pacific region and emerging technologies as well. But very interesting that this comes after the remarks that were made by S. Jaishankar during the Raisina dialogue, where he did not just target Pakistan, but also spoke of the UN's double standards. He did slam the West on how it's positioned itself as far as Pakistan is concerned and the manner it continues to engage in several terror activities. And comes this particular message which has been sent out by Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh to his Netherlands counterpart. I want to go across to Akash Sharma, who joins us with more details. What more do we know about the conversation that took place between the two leaders, Akash?
Right. So, Kitwin, you see, this meeting happened at around 12, today, and it was made very clear by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh that how Pakistan is involved in terrorism, how they sponsor terrorism, and that is the reason why when it is about the sophisticated weapons and the defence technology, so it should not be shared with the country. In fact, he urged to the Defence Minister of Netherlands that they should not provide the defence equipment or the technology to Pakistan. In fact, we are learning that both ministers had this fruitful meeting, at South Block today, where, a number of things were discussed, defence cooperation, how, they are going to focus. In fact, both the countries are going to focus on security, information exchange, and also the Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is one big important, issue, or I should say, the point of discussion, between these two countries. So it was very much discussed. But Pakistan remains the highlight, as it was mentioned categorically by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, that how countries like Netherlands should not give any sort of sophisticated weapon or technology to Pakistan, because Pakistan sponsors terrorism, and India is somewhere facing the kind of things in Jammu and Kashmir, and it is because of the fact that Pakistan is somewhere supporting these groups, which are carrying out these terror activities in the states of Jammu and Kashmir, and are trying to, carry out these activities in other areas as well.
Oh yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Akash, for joining us with that update. And like I said, this messaging cannot be seen in isolation. I was referring to the comments that were made by the External Affairs Minister. So let's talk about that in greater detail. This happened during the session at the Raisina dialogue, and the External Affairs Minister was the one to slam Pakistan and also some in the West over their stance on Kashmir. He stated that the United Nations transformed an invasion into a dispute. He also emphasized the importance of international order and fairness, highlighting that a strong global system must maintain consistent standards. Further, Mr. S. Jaishankar referred to Pakistan and said a country does not need to be a big nation to pose a risk to others. He then recalled how India's appeal to United Nations was met with an equalization of culpability despite the clear aggressor being Pakistan. Listen in.
We do need an international order, just like we need a domestic order. Any country which will take risks, which will have extreme positions, which would, test the system, will actually use disorder to its advantage. Now, the old order, it was an order. It was a product of its times. But why I felt that its virtues were exaggerated was, I think the rule maker and the rule taker had somewhat different perspective, and you apply that order to the same country on the same issues differently. Take Afghanistan, okay? So the same Afghanistan, the same Taliban, which was an outlier, was welcomed in the Doha process, was welcomed in Oslo. Apparently at that time people were okay with it. Today again we are going back saying, Taliban is doing all these not so good things. When it suits you to deal with the Taliban, they are okay. When it is not, they are not okay. You are an extremist today, you wear a suit and tie, you are okay. The longest standing illegal, I would say, presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India. What we saw in Kashmir. Now, we went to the UN. What was an invasion was made into a dispute. So, the attacker and the victim were put on par. Who were the culpable parties? UK, Canada, Belgium, Australia, USA. When the West goes out into other countries, it's apparently in pursuance of democratic freedoms. When other countries come into the West, it seems to have a very malign intention. A strong, a global order must have some basic consistency of standards. We have military coups to our east in Myanmar. They are no-no. We have them even more regularly to the west, where. They seem to be okay.
And shifting our attention to another very interesting conversation. This is CNN News 18 Siddhant Mishra, who spoke exclusively to Deputy NSA of Taiwan. From economic ties to the Indo-Pacific partnership, Taiwan is eyeing stronger collaboration with India. I leave you with this insightful conversation. Thanks for watching.
So my first question to you is that how do you assess the current situation, the current relationship between India and Taiwan?
I think the India-Taiwan relationship has been okay.
Okay.
And we have a representative here in New Delhi.
Okay.
And you have also very good representative in Taipei.
Okay.
Other than that, the economic relationship is also improving. There are increasingly more companies from Taiwan to invest here. Not only the regular ICT, but also semiconductor. I understand PMCC, not TSMC, has already a cooperation project in Dorela. And we are very glad to see those progresses being made.
What is new administration's perception and policy towards India?
This current administration led by President Lai is also a DPP ruled administration, and so it's the same ruling party from previous administration. So there is greater continuity in our foreign policy, and India is a partner of Quad, and very important for the peace and stability of the whole Indo-Pacific region. So we do see India as a partner. So we shall keep cherishing this relationship and also work our best to promote the economic ties between our two countries.
Okay, and how momentum could be sustained and maintained between the two countries?
More investment and more trade.
Okay.
And also more people-to-people exchange.
Okay. How do we take the relations to the next level? Is that challenging?
Yes and no. From the very fundamental base that between our two countries, I think we have a very friendly relationship between the two peoples. So fundamentally, there shouldn't be any big problem. There is no conflict of interest or national interest. But there are also challenges and opportunities. The opportunities I already said, there should be much more greater potential for economic cooperation. But there are certain hindrances, obstacles. The Taiwanese business community is not that familiar with the business environment in India.
Okay.
And we know India has high tariffs, and we don't have a trade deal with India. Although you do have some of the special economic zone, but these are individual arrangements. So we're thinking it is about time we think about a more general trade arrangement between our two countries.
Okay. So when can we expect direct flight between New Delhi and Taipei?
Wow, beats me. Of course, from my own perspective, I come to New Delhi at least once a year. I really hope there is a direct flight. In the past, we did, but after COVID, because the rearrangement of the airplane companies, so there's no direct flight. I am not in the position to answer this question on behalf of those private airplane companies. But if there's anything our government can do, we'll do the best.
Good evening, you're watching Plain Speak with me, Poonam Burde. A little after 7 p.m. yesterday, there was complete chaos in Nagpur in Maharashtra. Rumors of burning of religious content during a demonstration by right-wing groups lit a fire that gutted several homes and vehicles in the city. Two communities, two different groups clashed, prompting the police to fire tear gas and resort to lathi charge to bring the situation under control. Stones were pelted, vehicles were vandalized, they were set ablaze, even policemen were attacked. It has led to the arrest of at least 50 people so far. The police believe that information for people to gather was spread through social media. Now, cyber teams have been deployed to understand the timeline of how quick that message was circulated. All of this came to the fore after the Chief Minister of the state in the floor of the House in the Assembly said that this seems to be a pre-planned attack. The opposition in the state, however, is not convinced. For them, this was state-sponsored violence, and nothing short of Devendra Fadnavis's resignation will placate them. But why is a Mughal emperor who died more than 300 years ago become a hot topic of debate, enough to rile up politicians in the state of Maharashtra, cause damage to public property, and raise concerns over people's safety? Let me take you through some of the defining moments from yesterday before we get into that and find the answers to those questions. In this first video that we show to you here on Plain Speak, watch how these two groups came face to face in the Mahal area of Nagpur. This was the exact moment where the violence began. Anticipating more violence, there were security personnel that were deployed on site there in large numbers in a bid to try and control the situation. There were reinforcements that were brought in as well. From vehicles and public property being vandalized to even a crane, a JCB that was set ablaze. There are several such videos that have been doing the rounds on social media that we've accessed for you here on CNN News 18 as well, that are testament to the kind of vandalism that came to the fore in the city of Nagpur yesterday. There was arson as mobs ran amok on the streets late last night. In no time, these clashes erupted, leading to stone pelting. Today, the Chief Minister of the state on the floor of the House said that there were trolleys and bags of stones that were recovered from this site. That stones were not only pelted at vehicles and at each other by these two groups, but policemen were also targeted. Specifically, policemen were targeted is what he said. Devendra Fadnavis said that DCP rank officers have suffered injuries, at least 3 of them during that violence. He even spoke over the phone to one of them, assuring all sort of assistance from the state government. Several houses, vehicles, a doctor's clinic was vandalized as well following the rumors of this holy book being burnt. But all it was a rumor.